All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Sober Yoga Girl. I am really excited to have Leanne with me here today. And we have been connected on social media for like ever. And it's the first time we're finally meeting on Zoom, which is really cool. And Leanne is based in the UK and she is a writer, she is a mother, and she is a passionate advocate about sobriety. So I think she's a great guest to have on. And I'm really excited to hear your story.
Oh, hi, Alex. Thank you for having me. As you say, it's really exciting to finally meet because I feel like we have been friends for quite a long time now. So thank you so much for having me on so I can share my knowledge on my journey.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So I was wondering if you could start us off with telling a bit more about yourself. So I know you're a mother and you're a writer. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so I became a mother. My daughter is now 5. I was in a complete different occupation before I had my daughter. I actually was running a bar with my friend. Wow. We had a bar together. Very change of history now. But my daughter was born with serious complex health conditions and like complex needs. So I really had to change literally everything what I did. I'm a single mom, so I had to juggle, weeks and months in hospital with working as well. And I'd always written, I'd always, been really passionate about it. But I thought, right, I'm going to actually give this a good go because it's realistically the only thing that fits around my child. And, I've got really lucky with it, to be honest. I've got a couple of books coming out next year. And, it is hard work and determination, but I kind of feel it's a lot of luck as well. I've just kind of all drifted into the direction that I was meant to be. And I'm doing lots of work now within the sober community. Have a website myself. I'm doing lots of events and lots of sort of talks and programs on sobriety. I am not an expert, and I will always say this, but I think, it has gone to show that, sharing your journey can help other people as well. So that's really it about me. I just sit at home writing books really and mothering, which is just a joy. I never thought I'd be a mother. Wasn't something that, I wanted in my life really, if I'm honest. I just was so, selfish really. I didn't see having a kid. I just was a 30-something woman enjoying herself on the party scene, but it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. So there we go. So
tell me about your drinking then. Like, when did you start drinking?
So this is also, so it kind of goes hand in hand. I've always, I'm not going to lie, from 11, 13, whenever I could access alcohol, drinking was a big part of my life, and then I got into my teenage years and, drinking was then boring. So then drugs came in, and I've always been known, and my friends will say this about me, I was the party girl. I was, I would create the party, I would start another party. It was just all about parties. So drinking for me has been prevalent throughout my whole life, unfortunately. But it all sort of, sobriety came to a head. After my daughter was born, I almost lost her. It was a really trying time. I was seeing things in hospital that were just, my mental health was shot. I had a mental health breakdown. I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression. I wasn't able to eat. I couldn't, I'd get out of bed to dress my daughter, but I wasn't functioning as a human being. I didn't get sectioned. I was very close to it. There were discussions about it, whether I was going to actually section myself. And I just got lots of help and lots of counselling. But at this time, I was still drinking. And it wasn't in the day. And this is where people, I class myself as a functioning alcoholic because I'd get up, I'd be super mom in the day, my house is all clean, I'd do the food shop, my daughter's very well looked after, put her to bed, and I'd be doing 2 or 3 bottles of wine a night to cope with the trauma of what we were having to go through and what we face in the future, which is, quite terrifying by anyone's means. But I was kind of sort of lying about it to people. I wouldn't, if people came around to the house, I wouldn't drink in front of them. I'd do it and then left. It became this really sneaky, secretive thing. And even when I first got sober, I would always say to people, I just drink a little bit too much. I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have a drink problem. I was always really defensive. But, 509 days later, I do identify as a functioning alcoholic. And, it's not something that I'm proud of, but I am proud of my sobriety and recognising the fact that I needed help. So really, drinking has always been, I've got a very addictive personality, be it drink, drugs, people, relationships, exercise, food. I've always had this thing within me that has got this, addict. So I shift. But now I'm, not like yoga for me. I'm very addicted to that. I'm addicted to running. I'm addicted to sobriety. So I'm still an addict. My addictions have just shifted. So there wasn't really a pinpoint when the drinking started, because it's always been there. But, I think it came to a head when I realised, there was a day while I was in recovery from my mental health. I sat down, I wrote my goodbye letter to my daughter, of saying that I and she was better off without me being on this earth and not being part of her, because I was such a failure. And that night I was found by a friend, and God. I wouldn't be sitting here today if that friend hadn't have found me. So that was it then. That was, it wasn't, I wouldn't want to say it was a cry for help, because I did want to end my life that day. I did want everything to end. But that's when I spoke to counsellors, it was like, everything was alcohol. Drugs weren't a part of my life anymore since I've had my daughter, and I'm very glad about that. But alcohol, got to the most extreme, and, what it was doing to my mental health. I mean, everyone understands that, like, you drink, you get a hangover, or sometimes you can get a bit sad because you've drunk too much and cry. But detrimentally, what it was doing to and what it's done over the past 20 years of my life, it's not healed trauma, it's caused more trauma. And I think that's why I'm so interested in getting it put into education, talks about alcoholism and drugs, because it's not just the day after you've drank, it can be months after. It can lead you to a life of, hiding away, the shame, the guilt, you can't connect with anyone. People ask me if I've lost friends going sober. I have lost some of my old friends that I used to party with, but I've made so many more connections and more friends, and, people that I wouldn't even dream of sending an email to start connecting with people. It's kind of a bit mad. So that was pinpoint of when I started getting help. And, I started sobriety. I had a couple of attempts and failed because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to admit to myself, all I'd known for 24 years of drinking from the age of 11 was being drunk. So what the hell am I going to do when that's taken out of my life? So it took about 6 months, and then on the 25th of July 2020 was the night before. That was my last drink, and I've not touched one since. And I would really like to say I will never touch one again, but I can't. But I can say that I want to never drink again. I think you just never know what's going to happen in the future. But that's where we are. And I have to say, it's the best decision I have ever made. I look back at myself 5 years ago, who would look at me now thinking, oh, what are you doing? Why would you want to live that life? But me now thinks, if I could tell my 18-year-old self what I knew now, my life may not be very different. I may be doing the same job, writing, creative, and things like that. But I wouldn't have caused myself so much pain and distress during, the meantime. And also, people forget it's not just about the person that's recovering from alcoholism or addiction. It's the knock-on effect. It's, what my friends have had to see, what my family have had to see, the worry that I've caused, that you have to process when you're sobering up as well. And you have to forgive yourself for that, because when you are in addiction, you just become this selfish human being. There is nothing else but your addiction and your want, For people like me, I'd give everyone everything in the day. My daughter would get fed well, dressed well, nice clothes, going out and things like that. But at night time, you're going to bed at 7 o'clock because that's when I'm having my wine. That's me, And I was living for the days to pass as quickly as possible to hit 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
But then 7 o'clock became 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock became 5 o'clock. And then once my friend came round and was like, you do know it's 10 o'clock in the morning. You know, it just spirals. It just absolutely spirals. And I've had a life of spiraling. And thank goodness I've managed to stop that spiraling anymore. You know, I do have, I'm not going to lie, you know, there are days when I want to drink. You know, I'm in a world that is surrounded with alcohol, and it's so accepted culturally, and it's ingrained in us. I know what it does for me. I am not a girl of moderation. I am not a girl. You know, if I have another drink, the likelihood is I will die, because I know that I'll go on a binge. My body will go into shock. So it's weighing up, you know, where we stand. But it's just something that I'm just so passionate about now. And, you know, as you know yourself, the power that you can gain from sobriety. You know, I've never felt so confident. I used to drink to give me confidence because I was quite a shell of a human being. But my God, I've got real confidence now. It's not, I've got to neck off half a bottle of vodka to approach someone to talk, you know. And obviously it's now logical confidence because it's within inside me. It's a power, it's a force that I have. It's something that I can use, not that I have to do something to gain it before. It's just now within me. Am I making sense? I know what I'm trying to say, but it's just such a powerful thing that I just sometimes I can't comprehend what sobriety brings to you as a person, and what you can get, and the time that I wasted. I don't remember my 18th birthday, my 21st, my 30th, or anything like that. And now I'm remembering, you know, colours that I'm walking past, the smell of the trees that I'm going past, you know, people that I see. It's just mad. It's like I said to somebody last night, it's like people that have got cataracts, and it's like you have your cataracts operation and you can see properly again. It's like you put sobriety into your life and it's like your vision is just clear, and everything makes sense. It's not easy, and you have your days where you want to give it all up, but you just play the tape forward, and playing that forward, you know those days, and it's always the day after you've struggled the most, you then have the most powerful day of sobriety. You're like, yes, that's why I got through yesterday, because today I am a hero, you know, and it's just so powerful. It just blows my mind. And you know, I was classic sober shamer. I would say to people that would come out with me, oh, why aren't you drinking? Oh, why have you bothered to come out? Why aren't you doing that? It's boring. I used to feed people as well. You know, if people had no money to go out drinking, I used to pay for all their drinks so they could go out drinking with me. I've bought people grams of cocaine before, so they stayed out partying with me, so I felt better about myself.
Yeah.
You know, and it's only looking back when you think, what a horrible human being I was, you know, but without thought or, you know, actively wanting to be malicious. But you're just constantly feeding your addiction. You're just constantly feeding it in different ways and manipulating situations to make your surroundings acceptable. You know, it's a crazy world. It is a crazy world.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that and being so vulnerable and open. And it really is so inspiring to hear like how much you went through and the way that you've been able to change your life, to transform your life, and now to share about it and inspire others. Like it's incredible.
In sobriety, you do, you know, I never thought if I took one thing out of my life, my whole life would get better, which essentially it is. There are things I have to do to maintain my sobriety. You know, I can't just think, oh, okay, I'm sober, I'm safe, I'm comfortable.
Right.
I get up every day, and sobriety is a choice, you know, and I have to get up and I have to do, sometimes I have to have a glance at sobriety. Sometimes I have to have a full-on fist fight, you know, but it's there and I have to take it, and it's a choice that I've made and one that I continue. And I just, you know, to anyone out there wanting to try it, it's so rewarding. If I could give you 5 gold stars to say, this is what you get at the end of it, but it's not like that. It does change your life. It changes your mindset. It changes the people around you. You know, I've gone from this girl that was just scrabbling around to get up to have her next drink or wait till the Coke man started to deliver Coke, to waking up every day, to doing small steps, to changing things in the world, to helping people. You know, I have this, not only a purpose for what I went through, but a purpose of the one that I want for other people is probably now more than I want for myself. It's projected power, you know, and I think it's something that I can't explain to people about sobriety. It is a superpower. You know, if you get this cape and you put it on and you get to be this person every day, you know, I didn't know myself for however many years. And it's so wonderful now that I'm getting to know who I am. I'm getting to know, you know, I've dogged myself for years because I was a terrible person, did all these terrible things and was just drunk all the time. But actually, there's so much good within inside me, and there's so many things that I like about myself. And I am 38 now, and it's mad just finding out about yourself. But it's so interesting. But I'm 38. I could have been 78 and starting my sober journey. You know, it's never too late. It's never too late. I just wish I'd done it a lot earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about sobriety. Hey, I've had so many people say to me, so I quit drinking when I was 27, and almost everyone that hears that, their response is, I wish I quit drinking when I was your age. It's so amazing that you quit so young. And I think that really says something about exactly what you said about sobriety being a superpower, and you worry so much about what you're losing, but there's no one ever, I've never met anyone that regrets giving up drinking alcohol ever.
There's so many people that, you know, I think once you pass the first little bit, which is the hardest, because you're like, now, if I wanted to drink, you know, all that hard work I put in, but it's when you've done 2 or 3 days or you've done a week, you think, oh, it's only a week. It's, you know, it doesn't matter. But, you know, just doing it and doing it as soon as you think. I mean, what I say to people as well, you don't have to have a rock bottom. You don't have to become an alcoholic to change your relationship with drinking. You know, it's more to the point of why you're drinking. Is it an escape? Is it to build confidence? Is it because you see nothing else in your life? You know, it's highlighting for other people. You know, I know that not everyone in the world wants to go sober. And honestly, if I could have 1 glass of wine once a week on a Wednesday and be okay with that, I'd probably do that. But as I said before, I can't. But I think it's more about people recognizing what their drinking patterns are. You know, are they a grey area drinker? Are they drinking socially, but socially for confidence? Right. Are they heavy drinking? Are they drinking for trauma? And I think a lot of people ignore that, or sober shame, or, you know, don't have conversations because they're hiding their own, you know, drinking issues as well. But I'll say it to anyone, any single person, whether you don't think you have a drink problem or not, have a look why you're drinking. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting to strip it back. And, you know, if any of my friends are listening to this, I've looked at their lives and I've sort of stripped them back and thought, well, why are they drinking? You know, what is it that makes them want to drink? Because I've gone 360 on this. I don't really understand now why people drink. Whereas I never understood why people didn't drink. Yes. I now don't understand, you know, because I've looked into the chemical makeup of it. You know, I've looked into the fact that we are drinking poison, and, you know, what it does to you and the chemicals within it and the chemical imbalance that it can put into your body as well. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. Sorry, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, Alex. I will stop.
No, but it's so true. And I completely agree with you on that. I've had that exact same pivot where I am just like, why would anyone want to do this? Right? Because as you said, like sober is a superpower, and it's so transformative, and it's only good things that come from it. Right? So why would we put this chemical into our body if we can wake up hangover free and happy and not be anxious about what we did the night before, right? For me, it just doesn't seem like a question.
The other day I was really sick. I was being sick and all sorts. I'd caught a bug. And I was just thinking to myself, I used to do this at least 4 or 5 times a week, but I did it to myself. It just, having to know that I've got to put a cold press on my head, or I've got to put a bucket next to my bed because I'm going to vomit, or getting water before you go to bed, calling in sick to work. Why would you do that to yourself? But it does take time for you to get your head around sobriety. But then I think most people are like us. We question everything after why then people do it.
Yeah.
As soon as someone says to me, well, why don't you drink? One of my questions is always, why do you drink? It's a conversation starter or stopper. Take it what you will, but it does have the affected desire for sure.
And, in your story, what really resonated with me is I had a really similar experience in that I was going through a mental health crisis and I received treatment for it, but I was continuing to drink alcohol at the time. And it was only 2 years after that I got sober. And I look back on that whole journey and I'm like, the treatment, the medication that I was given probably wasn't working properly because I was constantly consuming alcohol, right? Which is affecting the meds. And I just think it's so interesting how, mental health is becoming one of the biggest issues in our world right now. And I feel like the link is not being made between consuming alcohol and how much it affects your mood.
Especially with COVID times as well. People, I think I read somewhere the other day, there was a 60% rise in drinking in the UK alone.
Wow.
And what people have to understand is, we are working from home, living from home.
Yeah.
A lot of us, I do have a child, but, I'm single. I don't have a partner. Can you just imagine just drinking day in, day out, having no communication with the outside world in a terrible, frightfully worrying time anyway, mental health, that, our departments here with the NHS are just so struggling at the minute. But you've got a report on the mental health NHS side is struggling and reports about alcohol. And as you say, the two are not being linked, but they go hand in hand together. They have actually put something in the UK, to lower some prices of alcohol. And it's like, what are you doing? More people have died with drug and alcohol related illnesses than people have died in COVID in the last 2 years. But we're not talking about that. We're not having breaking news every night saying, stop drinking, stop taking drugs because it's killing us. We're just, I suppose it's like a hypodermic needle as well. We're fed, and alcohol's all about money. So much money is to be made in alcohol. Are they really going to stop it? Are people really going to take it seriously? Do people really care? They're lining their pockets. And it's criminal. It's absolutely criminal to the point where, but this is why there's people like us, Alex, because we will shout and shout and shout and highlight all these issues. But we have a massive problem over here at the minute, a massive problem with people are drinking more. And as you know, Brits are quite heavy drinkers. Yeah, it's part of our culture, the pub, it's a very English thing to do. But also the mental health crisis that we have, there are reports daily on people not getting treatment and then they've been found ended their lives, but there's no connection to obviously alcohol or the pressure from alcohol abuse in England on the NHS as well is just, terrifying. And these people need help, but they also need mental health help. It's like we're treating alcoholism, but we're not treating the root of it. Right. It's like, I don't know, stitching a cut back up, but only half stitching it. Why would you do that? The other side is still going to bleed out. There's always a reason behind people's drinking, so we need to address mental health, we need to address drinking, but we also need to address them together. And over here, Alcohol UK Change UK. They are really, really highlighting the fact that mental health and alcohol really go together. But, you know, I know, for instance, the sober community, since I even started getting sober, it's got so much bigger and I feel so much powerful.
It has.
But we have still got, unfortunately, and it's really sad, we've still got so far to go. You know, and I don't even think in my lifetime will we have changed things considerably in my lifetime. I really hope we do, but we just have to see, won't we? We just have to see.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely didn't think that we would have as much momentum as we did, and like in the few years since I've been sober until the pandemic happened. And I feel like we're gaining so much traction and momentum around it. So I hope as well, like it's my dream that when I have children, that they are not raised around the same culture of booze that I was.
We have so my daughter, because of her health complications, she can't ever drink, you know, and I want her to grow up in a world of, you know, that's completely acceptable. It's like people don't have an issue if you don't smoke. And I find that so odd. You know, you don't smoke, that's fine. You don't drink, like, why? You know, it is about the generation. And I think what's really nice is I think I was reading a report the other day, between 18 and 24-year-olds in this country have really started to look after themselves, have really delved into mindset and health. And, you know, and I was speaking to a 19-year-old the other day. She was like, I've had a few drinks, but it's just not my thing. I never want to drink again. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, you will love your life for not doing this. But it was just so refreshing to hear. So on the days where I'm like, is anyone listening? You know, things are still happening. So I think I just got to keep going. But, you know, we've got to go to governments. We've got to go to MPs. We've got to go to leaders of the world. You know, we've got to get something put in place. It's relentless, isn't it, Alex? It's just relentless.
I 100% agree with you. Yeah. And I think even just us sharing our stories and getting out there and doing podcasts like this, and, you know, you sharing everything that you do on Instagram, it's an amazing step forward, because I think for so long it was like, you know, it was anonymous. Like, people were not out there with their stories, and the stories need to be told for movement to happen.
Just before I came on this podcast, I actually put a post out saying to people, if we go silent, how many people won't start their journeys? Yeah. How many people won't speak up? You know, I had over 500 emails last week of people saying, you know, thank you for being inspiring, or thank you for talking, because I've actually made this step. Like, one person went to AA, one person did this, one person did that. Would they have done that if they hadn't have heard, you know, things that we're saying? I doubt it, because people, when, you know, you're in this drinking binge stage where you've got no confidence and, you know, no one else is like you think you're the only person in the world. But if you put on your phone and start scrolling and see, like, there's thousands of people around the world like you that have probably done, you know, worse things than you as well, you're going to say, okay, this is okay, I can do this. If you can then start meeting people, you know, you do lose your friends that you go out raving with or whatever, but you get a whole set of new friends that you can do lovely other things with, like yoga retreats, or still go raving, just not drinking. Yeah. You know, it's really important. I think it's so important what we're doing. And if we're silent, other people will be silent, and people are dying in silence. And that's what we need to stop. We need to keep talking.
Yeah, that's so true. And so tell me more about what kind of work you're doing in the sober world.
So I've written a book. It's out next year. It's about sobriety. It's called From Cocaine to Rice Cakes.
Amazing.
And it's, you know, I will be honest, if I could give people a footprint of how I got sober and give it to you and do it, I'd personally print them all off and post it through every single door in the world. But I can't. But what I've done is I've shared my sobriety story, how I got to getting sober, you know, times in my life where I could have got sober, but the realization just wasn't there. And a little bit about how life has changed being sober, and a little about the plan for the sober future as well. So I've got that coming out. I've got a website where I just constantly blog. about sobriety, about topics, mainly mental health as well. I'm doing a lot of podcasts at the minute, a lot of interviews talking about sobriety. I've done a couple of sobriety events as well, just getting people together.
Amazing. I saw that.
All sorts of connected. I'm working alongside quite a few alcohol-free brands as well. That's very exciting. And I have to say, coming from the bar industry myself, alcohol-free brands are lovely to work with, whereas before it wasn't quite like that. So just really banging the drum. I've made a lot of connections. There's lots of stuff coming in January. I'm going to do coffee chats where people can log in once a week and we all just talk. You can be seen, or you can hide your face on Zoom, but it's an open forum, not just for women, for men as well, because this is the other thing that I want to shout about, Phil, that men do get a harder stick of time, and they don't speak up as much as us girlies as well. So this is really a platform for everyone just to come together and, you know, talk about sobriety, even for sober curious people just wanting to hear people's stories. But yeah, there's just, honestly, for the last 24 hours, all I've talked about is sobriety, and it's just madness. It's just madness. But if we keep talking, the world will change, hopefully. But yeah, there's big plans. I'd like to say, you know, I want to take events on a bigger scale, do workshops and things like that. But yeah, that's where I'm going. But my mind gets carried away now because I've got time to think, because I'm not so hungover all the time. I can actually, but anything that I think, it's mad, because anything that I've said to myself since sobriety, right, I'm going to do this, has happened. You know, I'm going to write a book. It's happened. I'm going to write a TV series. It's happened. You know, I'm writing scripts for different apps online. It's happened. You know,
it's incredible.
It's the power of sobriety. You know, I want to do this, and I will do it.
Yeah. Everyone I know has manifested the life of their dreams when they've gotten sober, because you just got really clear on like, what is my vision? And you see any path to get there. And that's the thing, is like with writing a book, I don't know about you, but I wrote a memoir last year, and I actually started that book a long time ago, which I realized while writing it. And I realized that I had just given up. You know, I got 5 chapters in and then gave up because I was drinking, right? And I just didn't have the time to devote to it. And then as soon as you're sober, it's like, you know, you have the time and the commitment, and you're like, I want to get this done. And so I know, like, I never would have written it had I still been drinking.
For me, like before I got sober, I'd have all these ideas, I'd start something and then stop, and then I'd start something else. Like I started 3 businesses and didn't even do a website or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? I'd just start things because I'd be like, because I've always had this focus and passion, but I could just never get any further.
Right.
And it's all about self-worth as well. I think one thing that you realise in sobriety is the self-love and self-worth that you have. And I am worth this life, and I can have it if I want it. You know, I think when you're just so repressed by alcohol or in addiction, or, you know, living through trauma, or not addressing mental health, you just can't see the bigger picture. You can't see past day-to-day things. Yeah. Whereas now, my fight with alcohol can be day-to-day, but there is a bigger picture. There is where me and Darcy want to go on holiday next year. There is the house that I want to manifest to buy next year. There is the other book that's coming out. You know, there's so many more things, because you're not living day-to-day, you know, struggling through that day. You're planning the bigger picture. You're actually living your life. For me, sobriety is also quite an out-of-body experience. Like, especially in the start, it was like I was grieving myself. It was like I was saying goodbye to this sad human being that was so traumatized. And it was that sort of disconnection of it, you know, disconnecting yourself from it, and seeing the bigger picture, and you have to do, as you know, Alex, you have to do so much work on yourself, healing, mindset, focus. But in the end, it leads you to this, it's like a third dimension, isn't it? It's like this parallel world that we're now in living, and it's just wonderful. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one more question for you. I'm wondering if you had any advice for someone that wants to quit drinking. What advice would you give them?
Okay, so I always say this because this is where I stumbled, and I wish that I'd found the sober community before I got sober, because I think it's a really good tool. But I only know one person that quit drinking and is still not drinking from their first attempt. And I think there's a lot of pressure on yourself to, when you do it, you've got to stick to it. All I say to people is if you want to go sober and you give it a go, and then you find yourself at the weekend drinking again, you have to forgive yourself. You can't linger onto it, because you'll linger onto it and then you'll get drunk the weekend after. You have to use everything that comes with sobriety as a lesson, be it good, bad, or evil. It's all a lesson. And anything that you feel that you're failing in, I hate that word failure, because no one's failing. It's turning it round and using it into power. So if you know that you drank because you're around certain people, you have to pull yourself away from those people.
Yeah.
If you drank because you had a bad day at work, what's going on at work that you don't like? You have to delve into everything and realise why you've gone back to drinking. But the point I'm getting to here is, if you do relapse, be it day 2, 2 years, 4 years, you have to forgive yourself and use it as power to continually to move forward. Because if you don't, you'll just keep going round in the hamster wheel, and you'll never be able to get off. And I think relapse is such a big part of sobriety, and people just give up because they have relapse. And I just turn your relapse into power. And at the minute at Christmas, you know, I'm seeing so many day ones starting again, and it's so wonderful that they can feel so honest about it, because they know they're not going to judge, because no one in the sober community would do. But forgive yourself and push forward. And I know this time of year, everyone's sort of, well, we'll just start again on January. And it's just like, just start again now. Yeah. You know, don't wait till January. Just do it now. Also, another little thing that I would also say is, be honest with yourself. One thing that I wasn't at the start, as I said, I would always go, I don't have a drinking problem. I'm not an alcoholic. You know, be honest about your drinking. And honestly, once you are, and you realise why you're drinking and your drinking patterns, it's when you're going to start dealing with it. Because until you're honest with yourself, you're always going to hide whatever you're doing, be it hiding, you know, someone that I know used to hide alcohol in the bin, so when he put the bins out, he could get trashed behind his wife's back. You know, it's just be honest with yourself. Forgive yourself for relapses, and be honest is my key words of advice to anyone out there.
Yeah, and I love that, because I actually had a conversation about this in the last couple of days with a couple people, and I love that whole idea of just whatever decision you make, it just needs to be the decision that is give you momentum to keep moving forward, you know? So we were talking about like saying it's day 0, or just keeping going on from where you're at, calling it a blip. And it's like, whatever works for you, as long as it's in the direction of moving forward, as opposed to, like you described, just being on that hamster wheel of like shame and guilt, right? Because it's part of the journey, right?
I always say to people, there's no harm in standing still for a day. So you haven't gone backwards, call it you're standing still for a day, and then take a step forwards tomorrow. You know, I think you have to have your time to process what you're doing. As you say, is it a blip, or have I gone back to just drinking and completely given up on myself? Again, it's like touching on the honesty of, you know, and I read in a book the other day that you relapse mentally before you've even picked up a drink. You know you're going to do it before you've even poured or picked up and gone into that bar. So it is about the honesty in your head and the mindset again. Everything's mindset, isn't it? But it just so is. It's just so is back to all that.
Yeah. Well, Leanne, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
Thank you for
Honestly,
having me, Alex.
It was such a pleasure to finally meet you and get to know you and hear your story and all the amazing things you have coming up. I cannot wait to read your book when it comes out. I think that's an amazing achievement.
Thank you. I hope that one day we can do some yoga together, Alex. I really do. That's one of my, I'm going to manifest that. That's what I'm going to manifest.
Come to Bali for a sober yoga retreat.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If I can bring Little Miss, then that would be fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.